Hey guys, so this week we're going to be looking at 5.02 economic systems and being able to recognize the environments in which businesses function. So we're going into the different types of economic systems. You've probably had this in some classes. What is, first off, an economic system? It's how the society and the government organizes and how they distribute available resources, services, and goods. The first one they talk about is a traditional economic system. They rely on customs, primarily, history, and also time-honored beliefs. So they look at the way things have always been done, and that's how they move forward in the future. So a traditional country, maybe Africa, they would be a traditional economic system. The next one is a command economy, and this is where the government dictates production, supplies, and prices, and the state owns and also controls all the resources. Typically what you look at is communism, okay? And you can see communism is that command economy in which the government controls that whole system. They don't allow private ownership of businesses, and they just have control of everything. So when we're looking at command economies, we're looking at Cuba, North Korea. Those are definitely some that fall in that category. Socialism. Socialism is a modified version of the command economy. It's just a little bit different in that the government allows basic means of production. They allow private ownership of businesses. So you can see in communism they don't allow any, but in socialism you do have some. Alright, looking over here, I don't know why, but this just gives you a little more detail, talking about strengths and weaknesses of the different ones. You can see at the bottom you have a market economic system where you have private ownership of property and resources, and you have profit motive, meaning that you have the right to go out and make money. Competition, consumer sovereignty, individuals determine through purchases what will be produced, meaning that what we desire, what we buy, drives what's going to be made. Individual choice, and there's minimal government involvement. Sometimes we think the government's involved a whole lot, but in all honesty, they have very little involvement when you look at how much they do in some of these other economic systems. So this goes into talking about scarcity. I think we got into that a little bit already. When you have more wants and needs than you have product, then you run into scarcity. It just means that you do not have enough to be able to supply all the needs of the people. Opportunity cost, I think I've kind of hit on before. When you have a trade-off, that means that you give up one thing for something else, but your opportunity cost is the value of that thing that you gave up. And then the last little bullet down here is talking about the 3 economic questions, what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce, and that's what all economies are trying to figure out, are those 3 questions. Let y'all look over that. I'm not going to go through that one. Here you see a private enterprise system. It's a privately owned business that is ran independently of the government. And an example of that might be a clothing boutique. They're also known as a free market economy. And then you can see they've listed out the advantages and disadvantages here. I'm not going to go through each one, but as you're going through assignments, you can go back and look at these. So these are different factors that affect a business's profit. So I guess the first thing you need to know is, what is a profit? It's the amount of money that the person brings in because they chose to take a risk, and it's whatever they have left over after they've paid all their expenses in their business. Profit motive, the desire to make profit, and most people do have a desire to have money. And then you have income, the money received by the owners and producers for putting their goods and services out there to the customers. Then you have expenses, and believe me, in businesses there can be a lot of expenses, and you have to make sure your expenses are not more than your income, or you won't have any profit. So expenses are those things that are out there that you have to pay. It's the cost of running a business. Cost of goods sold, the amount of money that the business pays for the product that it sells, or for the raw materials that it takes to be able to produce the goods. Operating expenses are any expenses that are involved in running that business. You have gross profit, and it says this is the difference between sales income and direct cost of making those products. So gross profit is used as a performance indicator to help the business make decisions over its pricing policies and use of materials. This is where you have to see how much cost is coming in and decide how much you are going to charge for your product. And so then you can get that difference between your sales income and your direct costs that you have. And then you have net profit. Net profit is the gross profit minus all the expenses, and then that gives you your net profit. It tells how well your company is actually doing. So they are going to break down each one of these and talk about them. I'm going to look at a couple things as we go through. Most businesses have to take some risk. There's got to be risk involved. You take a risk just by opening a business. Having a sole proprietorship is one that is at the highest ranking of failing, more than any other type of business. So we see a lot of people open up businesses as sole proprietorships, but we also see a lot of those businesses fail. And that's unfortunate, but it does happen. There are ways for those businesses to manage those risks, though, and some of that comes from having insurance. So we'll talk about that later, but there are pure risks, which means there's a possibility that they're going to have a loss in a business. And so this lists out the different types of pure risks. The first one is economic. That comes from competition. When there's inflation, meaning that prices are skyrocketing, they've got some kind of government regulation, or if our country goes into a recession, that would be an economic risk. Natural risks include anything that could happen as an act of God, such as flood, earthquake, tornado, hurricane, fire, things like that. And then you have human risk. And any time that you have humans involved in something, you are going to have human error. But there's also other things that come about, such as shoplifting, employee death, things like that. So speculative risk is a chance of loss that can result in a loss. There's no change, no gain. And they give you an example of this too, buying new machinery or also constructing new buildings. You can look at the difference between a guarantee and a warranty. A guarantee is that promise made to the consumer that the product's purchase price will be refunded if the product's not satisfactory. The warranty, on the other hand, is a promise by the seller to the customer that the seller will replace or repair the product if it doesn't perform as it needs to. This looks a little deeper into risk. I'll let y'all kind of go over this as you're going through your activities that go along with this lesson. You can see emergency planning, coming up with ways that you're going to handle something if you have an emergency. It talks about avoiding risk, transferring risk. These are how you deal with those business risks that we're talking about here. And I mentioned insurance. Transferring risk, that's what insurance is. We take out insurance just in case something happens. And I'll be honest with you, these days you can take out insurance on just about anything you can imagine. But it lists the different types here, property, real, personal, all those different types of insurance. And I can tell you there's a whole lot more than that. And how to avoid risk. If you research and figure out things that could happen, then you avoid it by staying away from that thing or making sure that you train your employees so that they know what to do for certain situations. So that's how you avoid risk. We're going to talk about competition for just a minute. I've been speaking to some students about this today. I really didn't realize that was coming up in this lesson. But competition is when two or more businesses have a certain rivalry between them. And one might be trying to have a little better price, a little better product. Why do they do that? Because they're wanting the customer to come to them instead of the other company. So there's different types of competition. You have direct competition, which is, a particular company being in competition with another company that offers the same goods or services, okay? And then you have indirect, where it's a rivalry among businesses that offer goods and services that are not similar, but it's still a competition. So let me try to give you an example. Direct competition would be McDonald's and Burger King. They're a direct competition, right? Because they're both fast food restaurants. They both sell french fries. They both sell hamburgers. They both have, well, I don't know if Burger King has biscuits in the morning. They have croissants. But I mean, they both have a breakfast menu. So you can see how they are direct competition. So with indirect competition, and this is a wild one, but I found this online and I liked it as an example because it looks at McDonald's and Weight Watchers. They're doing completely different things, aren't they? McDonald's offers stuff that fattens us up. Weight Watchers is trying to get you to lose weight, but they are both after that same customer, right? So it's an indirect competition. They are not offering the same product or service, but they are after the same customer. Alright, looking at an oligopoly, says it's a market structure in which there are relatively few sellers. So this is different from a monopoly because in a monopoly, there's only one, right? And there's no competition. But with an oligopoly, you have a few, and let's just look at the characteristics right here. Few large firms, each must consider its rivals' reactions. Differentiated products. Entry's hard. So they do have a few sellers, but they're all in competition with each other. When you have a monopoly, there's only one. If it's a pure monopoly, there is nobody out there to compete with them. We talked about this in class this morning, a little bit, me and some of the students that were here. Inevitably in class, when I ask students to tell me who they think what a monopoly is, somebody will say Walmart. Walmart's not a monopoly. Because Walmart has competition. There are other stores that compete with Walmart. Even though Walmart might be bigger, they might sell more, they might sell it cheaper, they still have competition. A true monopoly, an example I would give you, when you live somewhere and you get electricity, you do not have a choice about which company you get electricity from, okay? Depending on your geographical location of your house, you get electricity from whoever offers electricity there, right? There's nowhere else you can go. There's no substitute for it. It's all you've got. That's a monopoly. There are regulated monopolies. So the government allows these to exist. And that would be what I'm talking about with an electric company. They are regulated by the government so that they cannot charge you ungodly amounts of money because we wouldn't be able to pay it. And I was telling some of my students this morning, something happened in Virginia. I don't live in North Carolina, I live in Virginia. And something happened years ago, and all of a sudden, our electric company sent out these huge bills. I mean, there was people getting bills that was $5,000 for a month. Well, they couldn't pay that. And so the government had to step in and say, hey, whoa, you can't do that. They ended up having to do reimbursement checks to all the people who had paid their bills already. And that's where government regulation is a good thing. Perfect competition. It says it's rare to find, but it is very important. Competition is a good thing, and I'll tell you why. When companies are competing with each other, they want to bring the price down, right? Because they want to bring the customer to them. And because they're competing with each other, they're going to give us a better price. They're going to give us the better product. They're trying to outdo each other. And it, in turn, gives us the upper hand. There's price competition, and they use that price to bring in customers. Non-price is when they're like trying to, give something extra that's not price. Maybe they say, we've got the best customer service in the world. And maybe their customer service is, and maybe that's something that you value a lot, so you go to that company because of their customer service. That's a non-price competition. And then there's price discrimination. It just can't be justified. Okay, if you look at how much the product costs, it's jacked up or whatever, and there's no justification to have a price that's that much. We see here there's antitrust laws that you should know about: the Sherman Act, the Clayton Act, and the Federal Trade Commission Act. And you see what each one of them does. The Sherman Act outlaws contracts, combinations, or conspiracies for trade. Also, it outlaws monopoly, okay? And for companies to come together and try to coerce and bring businesses together in order to make it one big monopoly. That's against the law, and that's in the Sherman Act. Then you have the Clayton Act. They don't allow mergers and acquisitions where it would be substantially to lessen competition or to create a monopoly. And then you got the Federal Trade Commission Act that bans unfair methods of competition or any kind of deceptive acts or practices. Freedom of choice. It's a personal choice to be able to choose which company you want to do business with. We have that in some economic systems, right? But some of them don't have that freedom. And private property, exclusive authority to determine how to use a resource. And then you have profit, which we've talked about profit already. Alright, so that's your notes for the week. I hope that kind of helps a little bit. As you get into your assignments, remember, if you've got any questions as you're going through, be sure and send me messages and let me know. I'll be glad to help you. If I don't get with you immediately, it's okay, I will. There's a lot of classes and a lot of students, but give me time to get back with you. Hope y'all have a good week. Bye now.